Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Emergence. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, the main overarching aspect of this episode is dealing with the whole Alan situation. Obviously, you have Joe looking into Alan's, potential murder because this might be a connection to finally catch Kendry on some of the dirty stuff that he's been doing. And Joe actually goes to visit Alan's wife, who is played by, I believe, is an actress named Tara Tooney, which is interesting. Like, she played the Emmy on like SVU for such a long time. So I was like, oh shit! I was like, oh my god, because I hadn't seen her in a while, so I almost didn't recognize her at first. But I was like, oh legit, that's her. But nevertheless, she ends up revealing something that's really very key plot important. Is the fact is that, saying that Kendry is a fraud, that this whole technology stuff, he doesn't understand it. The fact of the matter is that all the genius behind their work is Alan. Alan's the brain and soul behind everything. And the fact of the matter is, she didn't believe that Kindred would be the one that would kill Alan, which I thought was kind of interesting. I mean, when we see all the stuff that he's capable of now, the lines he's willing to cross, it makes you wonder if that... It makes you think like, okay, so if she doesn't... I guess... maybe that kind of shows you a little of his character of, he can cross certain lines, but maybe even going this... Well, her reasoning for him not killing Alan is because Alan was a golden goose, because he had all the smarts. Killing him would basically destroy any future that his company would have, because all the tech revolves around him. He's the one that came up with all the ideas. He was the smarts behind, Kindred being like the face of the company, to a certain extent. So... and now there's also the break-in at his place too, so it's like, okay, the timing is kind of interesting. But Chris looks into things and kind of basically figures out that Alan is actually still alive. He never died, hence why there was no body that was ever found. Which all that kind of sends Benny and Joe on a little bit of almost some version of a scavenger hunt, having to leave like their phones and, in her case, her weapons behind, just because like obviously he's a very like precautionary person, which is like, well, the fact of the matter is it's kind of messed up for you to ask Joe to leave her gun behind. I mean, to be fair, she is a police officer. It's not like she's involved in this whole Kendrick situation, but I guess it's like, better safe than sorry. So, regardless, I love that while they're trekking there, it's like, this way we're going to find out all this information about, Piper, what to expect going forward. And then you had, I love, Benny kind of throwing in there, like, he's like, so why'd you and Alex split up? And she's like, nope. And he's like, no, okay, it's good. Like, I love that he tried to have that small talk conversation. He's just like, we're not at that level, and we're not at the point where I'm going to be talking about me and my divorce. I love that. But I guess, like, it's still kind of shitty of him to kind of do what he did, especially because it's like that sonic weapon of his makes their ears bleed. I'm like, that's gnarly. It is pretty neat, his facility, especially when we find out, like, it's like 70 floors under the ground. So that was interesting. It makes you wonder what the rest of that facility looked like, if that was like literally floor 70, which I wasn't paying attention. Was there one lower than that? Or does it go deeper, or was that as deep as it went? But I guess it kind of makes sense, because I guess you don't want to be too close to the surface, because maybe some signals can be caught or bounced or whatever. I'm sure he's probably smart about keeping his signals kind of concealed or whatever, but I'm like, you're at that level, maybe it blocks all signals as well. Regardless, he does drop some information about Piper, because it turns out basically he destroyed all his work so that something like Piper would never get made. But then he drops, it's like, once again, Kendrick, there's no way he could have actually made Piper, and that kind of sticks in my back of my mind. I'm like, okay, so if it wasn't him, that's why the ending didn't surprise me. I'm like, it had to be Emily, because she's the only one that's proven herself to be that super smart, and it's like no one else really thought of it, because if it wasn't Kendrick who made Piper, because whoever it was, it's like, he said he destroyed all his work, and with what was destroyed, because I guess the thought was like, okay, so all his work they ended up destroying, maybe Piper ended up surviving, and Kendrick took that, but it's like, I guess there were such little fragments, you would have to be smart enough to kind of fill in the blanks to kind of recreate it. Or maybe in the end of the day, Emily recreated the programming because she was there and she's witnessed, maybe she witnessed enough of it, or like I said, found fragments enough that she was kind of able to kind of take her own smarts and apply it. Maybe she's smarter than even Alan nor Kendrick gave her credit for. Maybe she was secretly there, just kind of, eyes peeled and watching everything, and they never realized. Maybe not. But regardless, it's so sad too, because for him, he's telling Joe like, oh, you need to destroy Piper, which is like, wait, what? It's like, no matter what happens, that's still a little girl. She laughs, she gets afraid, she has empathy. And he's like, but that's the point. The fact of the matter is, the more and more, like, that means the programming is changing. That basically, in his mind, it's like, it doesn't mean it's becoming more human. It's meaning that it's adapting more and more, that the point that it can mimic being human. But more so than anything, it's the fact is, that means it's going off its original code. Like, whereas something might start, it's like saying, like, this is a kind of crude way to kind of reference, but it's like if your microwave went from being able to just go, I can cook stuff, to I can walk and talk type of situation of, like, that's not its original programming. It's learning and growing at a fast rate and kind of learning how to do stuff it wasn't originally meant to do. So it begs the question, because that's what's scary about it, because then it starts going in down that lane of, obviously, the real life, worries that people have about technology advancing to the point that technology takes over the world, is that type of thing, especially when you see what Piper's capable of doing, like, as Mia kind of references her being like Magneto, which always in the back of my mind, I wonder about stuff like that. Like, the fact that you can make a reference to Magneto on ABC makes me wonder, could you have done that before? You probably could have, but it's just interesting with the time. It's just like little things like that, like, oh, you can mention Magneto now because of the Disney Fox merger, right? Because all that's, the X-Men are under the Marvel umbrella, which is under the Disney umbrella. That's once again probably me thinking too much. It's probably like not as crazy as like, oh, you can mention Magneto without having to worry about it. As long as you don't show him, that's a different thing. Maybe that's, maybe you'll have to get caught up in stuff like that. Like I said, that's me just overthinking stuff. Like, probably things aren't as complex as I kind of put them in my head, but regardless, when you take that all into account, it would be kind of a scary thing, especially artificial intelligence. I even love that Joe finally told Chris, and it's like, she's an AI. He's like, okay. She's like, I love her. The actress who plays Joe, I love her expression. She's kind of like, just like her body language and everything, like, wow, you were taking it super well. Like, no, you don't get what I'm saying. She's an AI. It's like, no, I got it. It's like, she's like, wow, I practically had a nervous breakdown learning this, and you're just taking it in stride. He's like, yeah. I mean, I'll probably freak out about it later on, kind of figure out, like, might realize how big the universe is and how small my part is, in all of it. But yeah, I get it. And it's like, I'm like, wow, I just love Joe's response of being like, wow, that's great. All right, well, we're good then. I love that. She's like, wow, I was so worried about telling you, and look at you, you're taking it with stride. I thought that was kind of pretty neat. I wonder how is it that Kindred ended up finding them in the first place. But now when you think about it in retrospect, with the whole Emily thing, it makes me think how much of that stuff was actually Kindred and how much of that was stuff Emily was actually doing. Kindred never denied any of that stuff necessarily, so maybe Emily was, well, it makes you wonder, was Emily ever really, really in danger, or was she all playing it? That's the thing. What was real and what was a lie is kind of, the big thing in that case, So I'm curious, the people that found, because remember, who was looking for them? It was Emily. She set that up ahead of time. So, but then why would she let Chris know exactly where they were? So it had to be a thing of like, maybe she sent Kindred there, basically put it in a way where Kindred would be able to hack into their system to see like, oh, this is where they are. Well, but now that begs the question, like, he's not that smart to do that stuff. So Emily, how much, like I said, now I'm sitting here thinking about like how much was actually, even though the assassin, the dude who got rid of the bodies, the dude that, ended up dying in the hospital, that dude, how do we know that wasn't Emily? How do we know the dude that killed April and tried to kill Benny wasn't Emily? That's the thing of like, she seems like she's a mastermind behind all this, when it all seemed like she was almost like the side person. I guess she was supposed to be the replacement for Alan, but she never presented herself like that. It just seemed like she was more so an assistant level. Like, just the way Kindred talked to her, just the way she was walking near him made it seem more like, oh, like she wasn't that important, when in actuality she's like the most important person ever. Also begs the question, like, maybe the whole point of this was to get Kindred out of the way. She saw an opportunity with Joe of like, oh, I can use this. So maybe she was afraid of Kindred. Maybe she was really biding her time. So probably like that whole, oh, I can use this to blackmail him stuff was real. But then like she found an opportunity. It's like, oh, Joe's out of the picture. Now I get to do what I want to do. I'm curious to find out like what that is necessary, Which is so interesting because like the way she's been playing it up, like the time she spent with Chris, like the way you're joking around. I even love her being like, Action Jeeves has that, you know, Fitbit, and he's like, yeah, I get that. He's like, you know, I do like that nickname, and he's just like, Action Jeeves, spelling it out and stuff like that. She's like, give me some space, and even the fact is, later on, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't hate you guys as much as I thought I would. So, and she leaves, and I'm like, dude, okay. So there's all that. Alan is now in the wind. All his facilities, the shore, he made sure to melt everything so that no one would know, find any of the research that he had. So there's that with everything. So there's no going back to that to figure things out, because he never fully explained like what. And I like that, you know, it's in the back of Joe's mind about like some things like, okay, so is she going to stay looking like a 10-year-old girl forever? Is she going to grow? Which I would assume she would grow, just because obviously you can't have an actress who, the actress herself is going to get older and grow. So I think you'd have to make it so like, no, she'd probably grow too as well. So, but I like those questions being asked, because that's immediately put, because that's something you can't help but think about. Is like, if she is an AI, well, I mean, but she's a synthetic human, so she's meant to mimic a real life human, so they'll probably blend in. She probably will grow like any other person, stuff like that. So I just think that, just something that's kind of floating in the back of my mind that I like that was floating in the back of Joe's mind as well. I am curious what Alan's going to do now that he knows that his research has produced Piper. She is the only one left, but I guess it's like, if Piper can be made, more can be made as well. But I guess it's like the focus is on getting her at 100% of like understanding everything and what she's capable of, and then maybe kind of go on a mass production level. Maybe not. Maybe all that's necessary is her at 100%, and that will get the dominoes rolling. Maybe not. But now that he knows that Piper's out there, I kind of worry that he might try and take a shot, because it's like, oh, Joe's not willing to destroy her, I will have to. But it's like, I almost thought it was kind of interesting, because he was like, Piper, that's what she's called. And it's like, to me, I was like, oh, does that have some significance or something? But it's like, no. I guess the fact is that, like, it not just being a thing, it being called Piper, but like Piper's the one that kind of went like, no, I'm okay with that name. It makes you, it was a name that was, thrown out there because of Mia and everything. So it's like, I don't know how about to say, like, is that just some random chance that just happened to have some significance, or I don't know. Or was it more so like, oh, it has a name, so it does kind of have an identity. It isn't just like some AI, that it is kind of becoming a person in its own right. I mean, there's everything we saw in those videos that obviously had Benny scared too, about like, well, this is what she's capable of and everything, like showing that level of destruction. So it's like, we don't know how long ago that was. That was probably right before she met Joe. And that's the thing. It's because the difference is she found a home in Joe. And the question is, why is that? Like, is it just Joe's just, sweet, loving nature? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, she's just a very sweet, loving person. So I'm curious, is it that, or is there something deeper there? The reason why, I mean, it might just be because you were the first person that showed her such kindness, especially because the group she was, I mean, to be fair, it was like the crash or whatever kind of reset her, or maybe that was the whole point, to reset her. Maybe for Emily, this was one giant mouse maze. To kind of see like, oh, like if I change certain things, well, like this is some like giant lab, like that she's a giant lab rat, and everything is, a controlled experiment of like, oh, let me adjust these variables, and what does it mean in the long run, so that's where my mindset is about the whole situation. I did like that Mia and Piper did go off, like, oh, let's try out my abilities and everything. Obviously, Mia was pushing more so for it than Piper. But when Piper does use her powers, Mia ends up getting hurt. They go to Abby and they come up with lame excuses. It's actually super adorable, because they're really like sisters in that regard, of just like them covering them and like, yeah, it's like, oh, Mia was sick, but she's better now. And it's like, yeah, she fell off a bike, hit a rock. Yeah. So I thought that was just kind of adorable, bringing Alex over. And I love that whole thing of like, oh yeah, like Abby being like, you two are such a weird divorced couple, because Joe sent Alex to talk to Ed about his condition, but it didn't go that well, kind of blew up in his face. But he's like, but then Abby's like, oh, you have a plan? He's like, what? No, I don't. So I think there is a part of him, like, I think the divorce might have been more Joe's idea. Maybe not. I don't know. For whatever reason, we're probably not going to dive into that. But I think Alex was the one a little more reluctant about the whole situation. So maybe that's what the whole plan is, that maybe he's trying to shift things, trying to get back what's back between him and Joe, because there are sparks there, so as I've mentioned before, so we'll see. Well, obviously that's a complicated situation now, because Joe ends up deleting the video showing what Piper was capable of, and Alex is like, well, you've known for a while. It's like, I can't tell you, because for her, she was like, Chris was going to be the last person she was going to tell the truth about Piper, because she can't take the chance that Mia, Alex, nor Ed might accidentally slip up and reveal. Because the thing is, Emily said, like, if she becomes aware of what she is, she'll kind of self-destruct. And it's like, I don't want that, because she cares about Piper. So it's like, I don't want that to happen. So I have to for everyone's sake, including hers, I can't let anyone know. And now it's like, oh, you're throwing out there about her having superpowers. I know the truth about her, but I can't tell you guys. And now it's the thing of like, will she, hurt me again? Can you promise that she won't hurt me? And it's like, I can't, and it's like, oh, and you expect me to trust you. And it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back with where they are, like the kind of progress that was made, especially because like there was that sweet moment of Alex being like, give me your phone, Mia, and Mia's like, and he's like, for a week, and she's like, fine, and he's like, excuse me, he's like, yeah, that's what I thought, and he's like, you don't give me those puppy eyes, and oh, I'm so sorry crap, you're grounded for a week too, and Piper's like, fine, and he's like, welcome to the family. I'm like, it's so heartwarming, and then that moment happens, and it's like, dude, that sucks. And Alex ends up taking Mia away, and Mia's like, it wasn't her fault, it was my fault, like, she didn't do anything wrong. But it's that thing of like, Alex is just trying to look out for her safety. He was reluctant around having them around, but he grew to kind of like Piper. But now knowing like, oh, there's something else going on here, and that Joe's keeping secrets, it's just, so obviously I'm sure Ed's kind of got his reservations about it too, because now like, well, his granddaughter's not living with them anymore, and it's like, oh, plus you're keeping secrets from me. Obviously there's, which is kind of like, well, it's kind of a gray area, because you were kind of keeping secrets from them for a little bit, but it's like, I've told you about my situation, you were kind of getting on me about that, but now it's this. There's actually this underlining thing connected to Ed's situation, because obviously Ed doesn't want to, take chemo. And obviously, like I said, Joe tried to get Alex to come at him about it. But he's like, for one, it's my business, basically not yours. Because was I all up in your business when you and Joe got separated? Like, because you want to know whether or not I'm thinking about my daughter in this situation. He's like, when you and Joe got divorced, were y'all thinking about Mia the entire, like, how often do you think about your daughter? It's like the whole thing of like, yes, I think about my daughter every time. It's the whole point he's trying to get across. But the fact of the matter is, and that was his reasoning behind it too, because it's like, for him, it's like, so you thought about it, and you were worried that Mia was going to get hurt. Well, she still got hurt anyway. So, but the fact is, for Ed, it's a situation of, I'm doing this because I want to be myself for as long as I can be, for you, to be there for you and the girls. The fact of the matter is, he wants to be himself, because if he goes through chemo, it's just, and even or any other treatment, he might not be himself. He might, he'll be in a situation where they'll have to take care of him. It's like, I don't want to be in that situation. I want to be able to be myself for as long as possible. But for Joe, it's coming from the spot of like, I didn't have mom in my life either. Like, the fact of the matter is, she remembers a moment of like, oh, there was a button that she was missing that her mom perfectly replaced. And it was her mom of doing little things, fixing little things, so that when she left, which makes me wonder, her mom must circle back into the plot in some shape or form. I wonder, is that something that's ever going to be tackled? Is it more an emotional family level thing, or will it be plot relevant? But regardless, I think that's also another, it plays into the plot too, because of her circumstances with her mom. It put her in a situation where she looks after Piper like that. So it's kind of like, it's like, I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to just abandon this little girl, like, bring her into this world and then just up and abandon her. So there's that whole situation. So it's, and it's actually interesting, because even Alan's wife mentioned that fact too, of like, yeah, there's a door that was creaking for years. All of a sudden, he fixes it a couple weeks before, he disappeared, and she's like, on some level, it was him kind of doing little things, his own way of saying goodbye, and that made Joe kind of think about that circumstance too. So for her, it's almost like you want to do all this stuff before you end up disappearing. And it's like, yeah, I know the circumstances aren't the same, but for her, it's like it feels similar, you know. And I thought that was just kind of a beautiful, you know, moment and everything. And obviously, Piper's, you know, kind of blaming herself because it's like, I'm the reason why Mia has to go now, and everyone's scared of me. So, and you take that, and then it's like the whole thing of her kind of realizing, like, well, for one, earlier in the episode, she realized the whole thing wasn't real. It was all a program. Well, because she ends up shifting it from a museum to the pier. And once again, I think it is a whole thing of trying to study her, because it's like, you look at Joe as your home. I hope that one day you'll look at me like that. But then she's also like, you're not who you say you are. I was like, oh, because she saw probably the news stuff about Kindred, right? And it's like, no, not Kindred at all. Of course, Emily. And so she's like, oh, we'll be good friends. The fact is, you can be whatever you want to be. And so basically the question becomes like, what is Emily planning? Like, why go through all this? Like I said, playing the role of like the victim when in actuality, because I think that's something Joe and them are going to think about next episode. The fact is, like, right, Alan said Kindred had nothing to do with this. Obviously, he's in police custody because we end up finding out that basically Alan ends up talking about the fact is there's a nanite thing they were working on. They were testing it on people. They knew things were going to be dangerous, but they did it regardless. What was it, like 14 people died. They paid off the families, burned the bodies, and just pretended like it didn't happen. So their history is super shady, which even Benny was like, like this is going to burn you too, which he's like, yeah, and I deserve to be because of what my part to play in all of this, you know? In his mind, it was his way of trying to, you know, that's why he also destroyed his research, because he knew all the terrible things that their work has kind of been used for and tested on, you know, the harm that it's caused. So he didn't want more harm to be caused because of his research. So a lot of interesting stuff going on all at once. I am so curious to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward, this whole situation. Like whether this is really the end for Kindred, or is he going to because the FBI is kind of, you know, it's a federal case being pulled up against him, so he's going to go away for like 20 years, but he has power and reach. I wonder, I guess there's no getting around this, but still. I'm curious, is Emily going to bide her time? Because now she can get in contact with Piper whenever she wants to, and at the same time, anytime Piper leaves, she won't remember anything until she comes back. So we'll see if that ends up being a permanent situation or not. But like I said, I'm curious to see what Emily has in store. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.